Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Prince Koi, Ying Zheng forces me to become the second emperor of Qin. Ying Ze travels through the Great Qin and awakens the physical fitness of Koi. You can get anything anytime, anywhere. Playing in the garden, I stumbled over a seedling and dug it up. It turned out to be Feilu. Following the seedling, I found corn, Feilu, chili, and Feilu. Ying Zheng is overjoyed. You are really my lucky star in Daqin. I went shopping and unexpectedly discovered a world map, along with a map of the distribution of metal resources and mineral deposits. Ying Zheng was shocked. The world is so big. Visit the workshop, kick out the boxes from the scrap heap, and upon opening them, not only are there guns inside, but also design drawings and bullets. Ying Zheng was shocked. With this artifact, the whole world will be filled with the flag of my Great Qin. Until that day, Ying Ze followed Ying Zheng to offer sacrifices to the heavens and was hit by a longevity potion that fell from the sky. Ying Zheng is numb. Can you distinguish your Koi physique from your father's? Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Koi Physique, Sweet Potato Seedlings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In 221 BC, 6 kings complete, foresees 1. Qin, after 6 generations of hard work, unified the world. However, after hundreds of years of warfare, the world was devastated. There are still remnants of the 6 kingdoms, constantly intending to overthrow the rule of the Great Qin. The side hall of Xianyang Palace, the mourning has ended. Ying Zheng summoned generals Wang Ben, Meng Yi, civil officials Li Si, Feng Quji, and other ministers to discuss national affairs. Ying Zheng, dressed in a black and gold dragon robe, sat tall on the throne with a majestic expression. Left Prime Minister Li Si arched his hand and reported. Your Majesty, now that the world is at an early stage of peace, the people of the original 6 states have become the subjects of our Great Qin. The population of Great Qin has skyrocketed, reaching as many as 20 million. However, in the original 6 countries region, countless people suffered from hunger and suffering. The people prioritize food. If we cannot satisfy the people, it will not be conducive to the stability of our Great Qin, nor can we truly gain the people's recognition and integration into our Great Qin. Upon hearing this, Ying Zheng furrowed his brows and couldn't help feeling heavy in his heart. If before, anyone who dared to cause chaos could naturally be slaughtered recklessly, however, now, the people of the world are all descendants of the Great Qin. In the 10-year war, even the accumulated wealth of the Great Qin dynasty was almost depleted. The Xiongnu in the north were a threat, and the Baiyue in the south had not yet been pacified. The remaining sins of the 6 countries and their determination to restore their country did not die. The Great Qin also needed to prepare provisions for the military, unable to support the people of various counties at all. How to ensure that the people of the world have enough to eat, now it has become a difficult problem for the entire Great Qin dynasty. Zhu Qing, do you have a way to relieve my worries about the Great Qin? Ying Zheng looked at ministers such as Wang Ben and Feng Quji, hoping that they could come up with good strategies. However, the officials bowed their heads and shook them one after another. They are not immortals and cannot produce food out of thin air. Even if it turns into food, it is also impossible for the people of the world to have enough to eat. This is a difficult problem that has been difficult to solve for eternity at this point, General Wang Ben sighed. If there were a type of grain in the world that could yield 1,000 kilograms per mu, it would be great, and the problem of people's hunger would be solved forever. Li Si smiled bitterly and shook his head. General Wang may not be familiar with grain production. I plant the most in Daqin, and the highest yields are chestnuts and wheat. However, even in fertile land, the yield per mu is less than 2 stones, which is 300 pounds. General Wang is really good at joking about producing thousands of kilograms of grain per mu. Wang Ben awkwardly smiled and said, I was just saying it casually. Everyone didn't take it seriously and continued to discuss. After all, producing 1,000 kilograms of grain per mu, how could it be possible? Half an hour later, let's take a break and discuss later. Many ministers saw the situation and bowed their hands to Ying Zheng. They all saw the weariness in Ying Zheng's expression. Ying Zheng leaned against the dragon chair, rubbed his forehead, and a strand of white hair fell before his eyes. My body is no longer as strong as before, I can still hold on for a few more years, but who can take over from me and take charge of Daqin? Ying Zheng was worried in his heart. Among the many descendants, only 3 of them were valued by him. My eldest son Feilu, he had a gentlemanly demeanor, but he was rigid and pedantic, and even dreamed of restoring the system of enfeoffment, which made him extremely disappointed in Feilu. Hai, the 18 sons, was spoiled and overbearing, with a paranoid and arrogant personality, and was not a suitable candidate. Only a 6-year-old child wins, highly intelligent, quick-witted, with a calm personality, has a royal demeanor. Can he support himself until he grows up, as he is only 6 years old? Thinking of Ying Ze, Ying Zheng felt less pain in his head and asked the eunuch next to him, "Where has Ze gone?" Before the eunuch can answer, Wang suddenly spoke up, "Your Majesty, the 19th prince is playing with the little queen in the backyard." "I see, let's go." "I'm just tired." "Let's go and see." Ying Zheng smiled. After speaking, Wang followed behind Ying Zheng and headed towards the backyard. Xianyang Palace, backyard, 100 flowers bloom and compete for beauty. Your Highness, come and catch me. He he. Don't run. When I catch you, I will punish you well. 2 silver bell-like sounds came from the flower bushes. Through the dense flowers, a man and a woman, 2 pink jade-carved children, only 5 or 6 years old, are chasing and playing. Both of them were dressed in brocade, with jade around their waists, and had extraordinary identities. The 2 of them were the 19th prince of the Great Qin, Ying Ze, and the young daughter of General Tungwu, Wang. Ouch! Just as the 2 were chasing and frolicking, Ying Ze suddenly stumbled over something and knocked his head on the ground. Seeing Ying Ze tripped, Wang was greatly surprised, and she quickly rushed to Ying Ze's side, carefully lifting him up. "Your Highness, are you okay?" Wang face was worried, with a look of anxiety in his sapphire-like eyes. Ying Ze, who was petite in stature, slowly stood up and rubbed his bumpy forehead. A memory flooded into my mind. I have awakened. Memories of my past life. Ying Ze frowned slightly. This is not the main issue, because with the appearance of past life memories, there is also something unusual: koi physique. With a koi physique, he can pick up anything anytime, anywhere, including future technology, fantasy techniques, and so on. There is a possibility of being discovered. Ying Ze was slightly pleased. After learning about past life memories, he already knows, 10 years later, during the 5th Eastern Expedition, the father emperor will die. The glorious empire of Qin, in just 3 years, it completely disappeared from history. This made him worried in his heart. After all, this matter concerns his life. However, now he has a koi physique, he will definitely not allow the death of Emperor Qin too. After Ying Ze realized it, he instinctively lowered his head and looked at the thing that tripped him. A fresh and tender green seedling catches the eye. Suddenly, Ying Ze was surprised in his heart. Isn't this sweet potato seedling? As far as he knows, sweet potatoes, a crop, will not be introduced to China until over 1,000 years later. Obviously, this is where the koi physique plays a role. P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Yenzu. Chapter 2. Corn. Potatoes. Chili peppers. Real koi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Your Highness, don't scare me. Woo woo. Seeing Ying Ze not speaking, Wang became even more worried. Tears are like broken pearls, flowing down uncontrollably. Upon hearing the sound, Ying Ze looked up and saw Wang, who was crying with pear blossoms and rain, and quickly comforted him softly, saying, don't cry, I'm fine. Not only is it okay, I also found a good treasure. Ying Ze stretched out his sleeve and wiped away the tears from Wang Yan's fair cheeks. Wang Yan breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that Ying Ze was fine. However, when they saw Ying Ze, who was close at hand, with their small noses about to touch each other, her cheeks were tinged with redness. Father once said, "You can't touch boys so close," but seeing Ying Ze's handsome and good-looking cheeks, she subconsciously forgot what her father had said. "Jian. Your Highness, what good treasure are you talking about?" Wang Yan was puzzled and said. Ying Ze crouched down and pointed to the emerald-green sweet potato seedlings. "See, this is called sweet potato seedling, which can produce sweet and delicious sweet potatoes. Its yield is very high, and if it can be planted on a large scale, it can ensure that the entire people of Daqin can have enough to eat." Wang Yan raised his eyebrows slightly, and Dan Feng's eyes showed a look of surprise. He also crouched down and looked at the sweet potato seedlings. In recent days, I have often heard my father sigh and worry about the food supply for the soldiers of the Great Qin. If that's true, it would be a great good thing for the people, but Your Highness, how high do you say it is? Can we still produce 1,000 kilograms per mu? Because of my father, she once asked the master. It is known that the yield of good farmland in the Great Qin dynasty is only 100 or 200 caddies per mu, and those lands that are not fertile enough can even yield less than 100 caddies. If the yield per mu is increased tenfold, should we be able to solve the food problem? However, Ying Ze shook his head and said, "The yield of sweet potatoes is about 6,000 kilograms per acre of land. If the harvest is good, it may reach tens of thousands of kilograms, but of course, fertilizer is needed." This is still a news report that Ying Ze has read. Only then did I realize that, it turns out that the yield of sweet potatoes is so high. Upon hearing what Ying Ze said, Wang Yan widened his eyes, his jewel-like eyes filled with disbelief. His small cherry mouth transformed into a type 0 shape. 6,000 pounds. Her small head seemed to be a bit unresponsive. Next, she pursed her thin lips slightly, pinched her fingers as white as jade, and began to calculate. However, at her age, it is obviously difficult to calculate. Just knowing, 6,000 pounds is a lot. Ying Ze saw her cute appearance and smiled slightly, then turned to look at the sweet potato seedlings with a curious expression. Looking at the leaves and rhizomes of sweet potatoes, it seems that they have matured. I don't know how many sweet potatoes can be harvested. If there were more, the people of Daqin might soon no longer be hungry. Ying Ze secretly thought in his heart. He, who has memories of future generations, deeply understands that, if you want the people to integrate into the Great Qin, you have to make them have enough to eat. As long as there is food to eat, one can survive. The people nowadays will not rebel at all. For the empire's difficulties in food, Ying Ze has also heard it many times from his father, Emperor Ying Zheng. It can be said that, sweet potatoes come at the right time, with it, enough to continue a long national fortune for the Great Qin. Originally, the people of the 6 countries would also be able to survive due to sweet potatoes, thus developing a sense of belonging to the Great Qin. If the emperor knew, I will definitely be extremely happy. Perhaps there will be rewards, or maybe there will be rewards. Thinking to himself, Ying Ze followed the sweet potato seedlings and began to search. Your Highness, why did you leave? Wait for me. Seeing the figure of Ying Ze walking away, Wang Yan quickly stood up and ran behind Ying Ze, as if afraid of getting lost. The backyard of Xianyang Palace has a large area. However, the weeds were dense and quite messy. This was to reduce expenses in the palace, and Ying Zheng reduced the number of eunuchs and maids in the palace by a considerable amount. This has led to the backyard being left unattended for a long time. 2 small figures shuttled through the flowers and plants taller than them. The smile on Ying Ze's face became increasingly brilliant. Following the sweet potato seedlings, he has discovered large areas of sweet potato seedlings. Calculated by area, there are as many as 3 or 4 acres of land. With so many sweet potatoes as the foundation, sweet potatoes can be popularized in the Great Qin dynasty at the fastest speed, and it is unknown how many people's lives can be saved. And he wanted to see how much more there was. Wang Yan's cute little face blushed like a ripe apple, making it irresistible to take a bite. Grasping Ying Ze's little hand tightly, following behind him, she was worried that his Highness might get lost, so she caught him. Even if my father saw it, he couldn't blame her. It seems like the end has come. Ying Ze saw the dense grass becoming sparse, as if he could already see the outside scenery, and there were only a few sweet potato seedlings left. Ying Ze is already very satisfied in his heart. 3 or 4 acres of sweet potatoes. A few months later, these sweet potatoes will grow dozens of times more. Hua, reaching out to pry open the grass, Ying Ze was surprised by the sight in front of him. Looking around, a large area of crops came into view. Corn, potatoes, chili peppers, tomatoes. There are many other crops, each one being a neat piece. Ying Ze roughly estimated that each one was several acres. With so many high-yield crops, the people of Qin no longer have to worry about hunger. Ying Ze couldn't help but smile and say. Wang Yan poked his head out from behind Ying Ze and saw the scene before him. His eyes widened. So much. P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Yanzu. Chapter 3. Wang Ben, Ying Zheng is confused and produces 6,000 yuan per mu. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Wang Yan saw large areas of unfamiliar crops not far away. Surprised, he even stuttered when speaking. Full particles, big golden sticks. The red, long and pointed fruit hanging on a small tree half a zhang high. There are also large, plump, bright and translucent red fruits the size of fists, hanging all over the small tree tops. A lot of new crops. In Wang Yan's eyes, golden light shone brightly. Obviously, I also understand the significance of so many crops for the Great Qin. Your Highness. Your Highness. Where are you? At this moment, the anxious cries of the maid came from afar. Wang Yan regained his senses and hurriedly said. Your Highness, they are looking for us. Let's go back and tell your Majesty and my father this news. They will definitely be very happy. Wang Yan's eyes were filled with joy. Your Majesty and father, they will definitely be shocked. Let's go. Ying Ze nodded. He also has this intention. Soon, the two walked from the dense flowers to the stone path of the garden. Seeing two people come out, digitals are searching for their maids and quickly rushing to their side. I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw that the two were safe and sound. Your Highness, you have separated us and secretly run to play, a maid pursed her lips and said in a sorrowful tone. Wang Yan felt a bit embarrassed. She wanted Ying Ze to play with her. Ying Ze smiled slightly. Definitely next time, definitely next time. The maid sighed silently. She didn't know how many times she had heard His Highness say this sentence. Your Majesty is here. Suddenly, a high and sharp voice rang out. At the same time, two figures slowly appeared. The people who came were Ying Zheng and Wang Ben. See your Majesty. See Tungu Ho. The maids immediately bowed respectfully to Ying Zheng and Wang Ben. I felt a wave of fear in my heart. Fortunately, His Highness came out in time and was not discovered by His Majesty. Farewell to father. Farewell your Majesty. Ying Ze and Wang Yan also respectfully saluted Ying Zheng. Then Wang Yan ran up to him, bouncing and jumping, with his head tilted back and a coquettish expression on his face, saying, Father, your Highness and I have found many good treasures. Seeing his precious daughter, Wang Ben's face also burst into laughter. This little daughter is the treasure of their royal family and also his flesh. It's almost like holding it in your hand and being afraid of melting, almost spoiled to the extreme. Upon seeing this, Ying Zheng glanced at Ying Ze and Wang Yan with his eyes. It seems that Zaire and Wang Ben's youngest daughter are of similar age. And they often play together, so they can be considered childhood sweethearts. Why not? Ying Zheng thought to himself. No one else noticed. However, Ying Ze noticed that he was slightly puzzled in his heart. He always felt that his father's eyes were not right when he saw him just now. Wang Ben didn't take his daughter's words seriously in his heart, but he deliberately showed a curious expression and asked with a smile. "Oh. What good treasure did Yenner find? Let me take a look." "A backyard, but some flowers and plants, what treasures can there be?" He is worried about the food issue in his heart, and it is difficult to arouse his interest in anything other than this. Is it possible that in the backyard, can we still grow food to solve the difficulties of the Great Qin? Ying Zheng also treated Wang Yan's words as childish jokes. "In the backyard, it has been 6 months since I took care of it, various weeds are everywhere, where will there be any treasures?" Although Wang Yanren is young, he has a lot of knowledge. Seeing Wang Ben's appearance, how could one not know that he doesn't believe in himself at all? She ran to Ying Ze's side, pouting her pink lips, her small hands pressed against her waist, and proudly said with her head raised. His Highness said, "That's a grain crop called sweet potato. 1 acre of land is enough to produce 6,000 kilograms. With it, the Qin no longer had to worry about food issues, and soldiers in the army could also have enough to eat." "But father, how much is 6,000 pounds? I haven't learned it yet." After listening to his daughter's words, Wang Ben smiled and instinctively explained. 6,000 pounds, 6,000 pounds means 2,300 pounds. Just. As he spoke, Wang Ben's voice suddenly stopped and his face stiffened. 2,300 caddies. 6,000 caddies per mu. Sweet potatoes. Wang Ben felt a bit confused in his mind and didn't react for a moment. If he didn't hear it wrong, just now, my daughter said, His Highness, and she discovered a crop called sweet potato. Moreover, this crop yields up to 6,000 kilograms per mu. At this moment, Wang Ben even doubted whether he was dreaming, or do you say you have hallucinations? Otherwise, how could he hear such outrageous words? Produce 6,000 kilograms per mu. This is 20 times the current grain production. If there were so much food, now the biggest difficulties of the Great Qin will be solved. Not only Wang Ben was confused, even Ying Zheng is confused at this moment. His eyes were staring like bells, and he looked to the side with shock, his face calm. This son, he knows, absolutely not someone who talks nonsense, and since childhood, I have been smart. At the age of only 4 or 5, he was already capable of surpassing some masters who had been immersed in mathematics for decades, so he can never miscalculate. This also means P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Ying Ze. Chapter 4. Yielding 10,000 kilograms per mu. Ying Zheng, who is dying of happiness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Not just Ying Zheng. At this moment, Wang Ben looked into Ying Ze's eyes, almost revealing a blazing spark. For this beloved prince of His Majesty the First Emperor, Wang Ben naturally closely monitors, and this crown prince has shown an extraordinary side since childhood. At the age of 1, one can walk independently. At the age of 2, one can speak. At the age of 3, one can read 100 poems. At the age of 4, no one knows the whole of Daqin, no one knows the 19th prince of Daqin. He is a prodigy. And it was very beloved by His Majesty the First Emperor. Therefore, he was willing to let his own daughter go to the palace to be Ying Ze's playmate, but the shock of the past, less than 1/10, or even 1%, of today's shock. As Yenner said, if you really have a yield of 6,000 kilograms per mu. No, even if it's just 2,000 pounds per mu, or even 1,000 pounds. It is enough to solve the biggest problem that troubles Daqin and save countless lives of its people. It can also feed the soldiers of Daqin. Only when you have eaten enough will you have the strength to go to battle and kill the enemy. At that time, the terrifying combat power and morale that the warriors of Daqin can unleash will more than double. As can be imagined, after hearing this news, Wang Ben will be so shocked and eager. However, when Ying Ze saw the excited father and General Wang Ben, he remained extremely calm. All of this was within his expectations. Sweet potatoes, as well as grain crops such as potatoes and corn, for the Great Qin, it is not an exaggeration to be considered a divine object. But just a sweet potato has already shocked them so much, will they not be even more shocked when they see crops such as potatoes and corn? Thinking of this, Ying Ze's heart was filled with anticipation. Ying Zheng regained his senses, his face tense, and his tone urgent as he asked. "Chiner, is what Wang Yan said true? Is there really a grain crop that can produce 6,000 kilograms per mu?" At this moment, Ying Zheng felt a little uneasy in his heart. After all, this matter is related to the life and death of countless people in the Great Qin, and even to the national fortune of the Great Qin. After unifying the world, he only then understood that unifying the world was just the first step in establishing a lifelong foundation. How to ensure that the people can eat enough, dress warmly, and survive is the key to ensuring a stable country. Due to the problem of people's satiety, the entire Qin dynasty expended an unknown amount of energy and was unable to solve it. But now, my favorite child, Ying Ze. Surprisingly, a grain crop with a yield of 6,000 kilograms per mu was discovered. This made Ying Zheng somewhat incredulous, as it had exceeded his imagination. Because he deeply understood what it would mean for the Qin if there were really crops that could yield 6,000 kilograms per mu, therefore, his heart is so uneasy. Ying Ze nodded and said, "Of course it's true." Seeing Ying Ze nod, Ying Zheng suddenly took a deep breath in his heart. Meanwhile, Wang Ben's face was filled with ecstasy. "I used to say, it would be great if there could be a grain that could yield 1,000 kilograms per mu. The result was refuted by Lise. I didn't expect to accompany His Majesty down to the backyard. His Highness Ying Ze truly discovered high-yield crops. Moreover, surprisingly, the yield per mu is as high as 6,000 jin. This has exceeded his expectations." At this point, Ying Ze added another sentence. "In fact, producing 6,000 kilograms per mu is also a low-yield situation for sweet potatoes. If the harvest is good, it can even yield 10,000 kilograms per mu." Break time. In the entire backyard, the ticking sound of a quiet drop of water falling can be heard clearly. Gudong. Gudong. Two swallowing and spitting sounds sounded, a steady Ying Zheng and Wang Ben. At this moment, subconsciously swallowing and spitting, they only feel dry mouth, hot all over, and their hearts cannot stop beating. Even my head feels dizzy. Happiness comes too suddenly. Even an emperor who ruled the entire world, a general who wielded a heavy army and fought on the battlefield, couldn't accept it at this moment. Both of their bodies were shaking. It wasn't until Wang Ben, with his strong body, supported each other with Ying Zheng that they stabilized their figures. "Your Majesty, Father, are you all okay?" Wang Yan, who was only 6 years old, was somewhat worried when he saw the two people standing unsteadily. It's okay, it's just a little dizzy." Wang Ben shook his head and reluctantly spoke. After a while, Ying Zheng and Wang Ben took a few deep breaths. The cool air injects into their bodies and runs through their entire bodies, making them feel conscious and clear again. Ying Zheng and Wang Ben exchanged a glance. You can see the warmth and ecstasy in the other person's eyes. They never expected that. "Just tired, I came to the backyard to relax and unwind, but I didn't expect to reap such a surprise." Ying Zheng looked at Ying Ze with a burning gaze. "Zaire, hurry up, take us to take a look." Wang Ben also said excitedly, "That's right, let's go take a look." Although the two knew that Ying Ze could not lie, they still wanted to see for sure. Ying Ze nodded. He was originally going to take them there. Next, under the leadership of Ying Ze, everyone hurried towards the sweet potato field. Wang Yan followed behind Ying Ze with a cheerful expression on his face. Although she did not know why His Majesty and Father were so excited, but also aware of what they discovered, it seems very impressive. P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Yanzu. Chapter 5. Exciting Ying Zheng and Wang Ben, the 100 Great Qin Dynasty. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. A backyard overgrown with weeds, a group of people walked through it, ignoring the weeds that were half a person tall, causing pain on their bodies. In the hearts of Ying Zheng and Wang Ben, they were extremely eager and closely following behind Ying Ze. The petite and lovely Wang Yan was protected in the middle by everyone. Half a quarter of an hour later, gradually walked to the edge of the grass and pushed aside the last layer of grass. A stunning scene appeared before everyone's eyes. For a while, Ying Zheng and Wang Ben's footsteps were both at a standstill as they widened their eyes and scanned the incredible scene in front of them. In front of them, large crops were neatly arranged in front of them. These crops, they have never seen or heard of it, but when I saw the plump golden particle stick that was the size of an adult's arm, Ying Zheng and Wang Ben almost instinctively knew that this must be a crop with extremely high yield. And such crops, here, it's everywhere. The pointed red fruits that grow on the branches and rush towards the sky look extremely tempting. And the huge yellow round crop that is about to rise on the ground, revealing half of its body. And those bright red fruits, each the size of a fist, hanging all over the branches, almost bending them down. There are countless fruits like this. Ying Zheng and Wang Ben were confused. Isn't it sweet potatoes? How could there be so many different crops here? Moreover, they are all some crops that have never been seen before. They only saw it at first glance, knowing the yield of these crops is bound to be extremely terrifying. It's hard to imagine, there is actually such a place in the backyard. If it weren't for Ying Ze, they would probably never have noticed. Ying Zheng subconsciously asked Ying Ze, "Zaire, what's going on?" Ying Ze had already figured out how to answer in his heart, and he spoke calmly. "Father, we didn't say anything, we just discovered sweet potatoes. Actually, there are not only food crops here, but also vegetables, some of which can be used as seasonings. They are all edible things." Upon hearing this, Ying Zheng and Wang Benxin were overjoyed. I thought sweet potatoes were already a surprise for them from Ying Ze, but I didn't expect there to be even bigger surprises in the future. But they don't understand what vegetables and seasonings are. They only care about the yield of these crops. Ying Zheng urgently asked, "What is the yield of these crops?" Ying Ze thought for a moment and said, "The production capacity of potatoes per mu can reach 3,000 to 4,000 kilograms, while for corn, the yield is lower, but it can also reach 1,000 kilograms per mu." Speaking, Ying Ze pointed to potatoes and corn respectively. Ying Zheng and Wang Ben's gaze moved with Ying Ze's fingers. Their expressions were unprecedentedly enthusiastic. Ying Ze spoke again, however, although the yield of potatoes and sweet potatoes is high, they are very late for the nutrients in the soil, so it is best not to plant them continuously. There is no such restriction on producing 1,000 kilograms of corn per mu. After listening, the ecstasy in Ying Zheng and Wang Ben's eyes could hardly be concealed. Ying Zheng's body was trembling. With so much food, can the problem of people's food be solved? Ying Zheng took a deep breath and made his consciousness clear. The difficult problem that troubled the Qin was surprisingly solved like this. And all of this, it's all thanks to Ying Ze. Wang Ben was overjoyed in his heart, and he knelt down on one knee and bowed to Ying Zheng. "Congratulations, Your Majesty, congratulations, Your Majesty, with such crops, the world can be peaceful." Wang Ben deeply understood what these crops meant. With them, even if the remaining evils of the 6 countries continue to stir up, they cannot change the magnificent momentum brought by these crops. Moreover, in just a few years, the treasury of the Great Qin will once again be filled. At that time, whether it was the northern Xiongnu, the western Sanrong, or the southern Baiyue, no one can stop the Qin's iron cavalry. Ying Zheng was also extremely excited in his heart. What Wang Ben thought of, he could naturally think of it too. However, as an emperor, he had to consider more. Ying Zheng suppressed the excitement in his heart. "Get up, congratulations. Let's talk about it later. We'll wait until the agricultural officials measure the detailed yield." "No." Wang Ben stood up and respectfully stood aside, but he had already anticipated in his heart, even if there is a deviation, there won't be too much deviation. This is already enough to benefit the entire Qin dynasty infinitely. Ying Zheng turned around and looked at Ying Ze, speaking softly, Zaire, it's not that father doesn't believe you, it's just that the matter is of great importance, and father also has to be cautious. Can you understand? He was afraid that Ying Ze might misunderstand him. I thought I didn't believe him, Ying Ze nodded, not surprised. Father, even if someone measures it, I understand. Upon hearing this, Ying Zheng nodded. In his heart, he secretly thought that although Ying Ze was small, he was extremely sensible and mature. Even Hu Hai, who is a few years older than him, and even Fushu, are far inferior to Zaire, who is only 6 years old. Ying Zheng ordered the eunuch beside him. Go, call a few agricultural officials over to measure the yield. No. Immediately, a eunuch was ordered to leave. P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Yanzu. Chapter 6. Li Si. How could there be a yield of 6 per mu? You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the side hall of Xianyang Palace, sunlight shines through the curtains and spreads towards the main hall. There was a lot of noise. After Ying Zheng and Wang Ben left, Li Si and other ministers were still discussing the issue of food. A censor with an indescribable expression, now that the world is at an early stage of peace, many good fields have become barren. The only way now is to vigorously encourage the cultivation of wasteland. Only in this way can we produce more and more food. The yield of chestnuts and wheat per mu is just that much. No matter how much we try, it won't be effective. As soon as these words were spoken, many ministers nodded one after another. Li Si also shook his head with a sigh. A clever woman cannot cook without rice. There's not enough food to eat, it's just not enough to eat, we can't just jump out of thin air. Even if we replant food after spring, it may not be able to meet the needs of so many people in the world. If it were really as General Wang said, it would be great if there was a grain that could produce 1,000 kilograms per mu. Although it was just a joke, Lise couldn't help but have delusions. At this point, a eunuch quickly ran in from outside the main hall. As soon as I entered the main hall, I loudly asked. What are agricultural officials? Your Majesty urgently calls. When Li Si and his companions saw the eunuch, they immediately recognized him as following His Majesty's side, but didn't Your Majesty go to the backyard to find the Ying Ze hall? Why do we suddenly need to summon agricultural officials? Upon hearing the order of Emperor Shi Huang, even when several agricultural officials stepped forward, we'll wait, what's up? The eunuch dared not hesitate and immediately spoke up. His Highness Ying Ze has discovered several new grains in the backyard with high yields. His Majesty needs you to measure the specific yields. The ministers were all surprised when they heard this. New grain. Discovered in the backyard. Why does it sound so strange? Your Majesty's backyard, they have been there before. It's just some weeds inside. As a result, Your Highness unexpectedly discovered a high-yield grain among a pile of weeds. It's like picking up gold in a pile of sand. However, Lizi's eyes turned and he noticed the eunuch's words. He immediately asked, the yield is very high, how high is it? Can we produce 200 to 300 kilograms per mu? After all, the yield is very high, and it will definitely not be worse than the yield of chestnuts and wheat. If that's the case, His Highness Ying Ze has made great contributions. Faced with the inquiry from Left Prime Minister Li Si, the eunuch instinctively replied. It seems to be a crop called sweet potato, which can yield 6,000 kilograms per mu. The eunuch only knew that when His Majesty and General Wang learned about this number, they both showed great excitement. But these eunuchs and maids have never read a book and do not know what the 6,000 pounds represent. However, these words fell into the ears of Li Si and others, but they were like a thunderbolt exploding in their minds, startling everyone in the entire hall. Li Si walked up to the eunuch and asked with a shocked expression. What are you talking about? Can you produce 6,000 kilograms per mu? Are you telling the truth? Not only Li Si, but also many ministers stared at the eunuch with shocked expressions. After all, what the eunuch just said is too terrifying. What is the concept of producing 6,000 kilograms per mu? As Prime Minister Li Si just said, even in the best fields, the highest yields of chestnuts and wheat are only 300 kilograms per mu. And this eunuch, surprisingly, it is said that a crop can yield up to 6,000 kilograms per mu. A difference of 20 times. How could this be possible? How could there be such a terrifying crop yield in the world? Besides, it's still in the backyard of Xianyang Palace. An agricultural official also spoke in shock. Produce 6,000 kilograms per mu. How could this be possible? We have searched all over the world and have never seen a grain yield of 1,000 kilograms per mu, let alone a yield of 6,000 kilograms per mu. What kind of crop can produce such terrifying yields? The eunuch shook his head and said, Your Highness Ying Ze said so your Majesty needs agricultural officials to measure. Upon hearing this, Li Si frowned slightly. He has great doubts in his heart about what His Highness Ying Ze said. Although it is rumored that His Highness Ying Ze has been intelligent since childhood, he is still only a 6-year-old child. He really understands, does producing 6,000 kilograms per mu mean anything? Let's go, is it specific? Let's go and see, then we'll understand. Li Si immediately spoke up, although he didn't believe it in his heart, since it was ordered by His Majesty, let's go and see. After confirmation by His Majesty, even if the yield is less than 6,000 kilograms, it would be a good thing for Qin if there could be an additional grain crop. Yes, let's go take a look. I won't believe it if I don't see it with my own eyes. I can produce 6,000 kilograms per mu. That's right, let's go and take a look together. What exactly is the sweet potato that His Highness Ying Ze claims to produce 6,000 kilograms per mu? If we can really produce 6,000 kilograms per mu, His Highness Ying Ze has made tremendous contributions to the Qin dynasty. If this matter were to be spread, Your Highness would probably be regarded by countless people as the auspiciousness of our Great Qin. Going together, sweet potatoes. I wonder what they look like. The ministers were all enthusiastic and followed the eunuch closely, heading towards the backyard. P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Ying Ze. Chapter 7. Shockingly See and Others, Your Highness is the Great. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Step by step. Step by step. With a series of footsteps, it sounded from the grass behind. Ying Ze will know, the people who came were not just agricultural officials, it seems that all the officials above the court have arrived. As expected by Ying Ze, quickly, Li Si and others emerged from the grass with sparse steps. However, when all of them saw the neat and fruitful patches, waiting only for the harvest of crops, their eyes widened one by one, unable to believe everything they saw. Are these all grains? Hey, isn't it sweet potatoes? What kind of crops are these? I've never seen them before. That golden stick produces particles several times larger than rice, and there are actually 3 or 4 sticks on a crop. Look at those red fruits that are bigger than my fist. There are 8 or 9 of them on a single crop, and the yield is too high. Look underground, what's there? Even the ground has been arched with cracks. How many things should be underneath? These crops have never been seen before, how could they appear so bizarre here? The officials who held the power of the Great Qin were all confused at this moment. These crops, which they have never heard of or seen before, make them feel that their worldview has been challenged. Lise was greatly surprised, there are so many crops, shouldn't there really be a grain yield of 6,000 kilograms per mu? Lise couldn't help but feel a tremble in his heart, he, who originally didn't believe it, now had to doubt after seeing so many new crops. After all, the scene in front of me is really impactful. After a long while, Li Si and others finally regained their senses and quickly walked up to Ying Zheng, accusing him. I will see your majesty, please forgive me. They were so shocked that they almost forgot to pay their respects to your majesty. Ying Zheng waved his hand and didn't care. I apologize for your innocence. Please test the yield of these crops as soon as possible, I want to obtain detailed yield per mu. No. Several agricultural officials, unable to suppress their excitement, immediately began carrying tools and personnel for testing. Ying Ze did not stop it either, he had already seen it before. These crops, which should have matured in different seasons, for some unknown reason, surprisingly, everything has already matured and can be harvested at any time. Ying Ze also looks forward to it. I don't know if these crops will be any different from those from previous lives. While several agricultural officials were conducting inspections, Li Si couldn't help but frown as he looked at the neatly arranged crops. No matter what you think, it is extremely unreasonable. In the overgrown backyard, there are surprisingly so many new and high-yielding crops, and it's like being deliberately planted. Each place is neatly arranged in an area, even in these areas, there is not a single weed. Thinking of this, Li Si couldn't help but ask the first emperor, Your Majesty, why did these new crops suddenly appear in the backyard? And it's like being planted, arranged neatly like this. Li Si's words immediately stunned many ministers, and then they also reacted. They looked at the neatly arranged dozens of acres of land again, without any clutter. It feels unbelievable, this doesn't seem like what a backyard should be, and this news seems to have been discovered first by His Highness Ying Ze. The eyes of the crowd instinctively turned to the 6-year-old but already beginning to look handsome, Ying Ze. Even Ying Zheng couldn't help but look at Ying Ze with confusion at this moment. Faced with the gaze of numerous ministers, Ying Ze remained calm and composed. He naturally knows, all of this is due to one's coy physique. However, the more detailed the explanation, the more troublesome it will become in the future. Therefore, Ying Ze just spoke lightly. Perhaps my prince's luck is better. The petite and adorable Wang Yan pouted with cute thin lips and said. Perhaps your highness is descended from a lucky star. Your highness helped us discover so many good things in Daqin, isn't it a good thing? After speaking, Wang Yan pinched his waist with both hands and glanced at the crowd. Suddenly, Ying Zheng regained his senses and couldn't help feeling lost in his heart. Yeah. Zaire is lucky to have made such a great contribution to Daqin. What is he still wondering? Thinking of this, Ying Zheng looked apologetically at Ying Ze. Later, Ying Zheng gave Li Si a faint glance. Yener is right. Chener is lucky and has been bestowed with the lucky star of Daqin by heaven. Can't we? Finally, Ying Zheng exuded a terrifying aura. At this moment, Li Si felt a cold sweat streaming down his back and dared not hesitate at all. He immediately knelt down. I dare not. His Highness Ying Ze is the lucky star bestowed upon me by heaven in the Great Qin Dynasty. Other ministers also spoke up when they saw the situation. Your Highness is the lucky star of my Great Qin. If the yield of these new grains is really so high, it would be a divine gift from heaven for my Great Qin. The yield per mu is 6,000 jin. Your Highness, this has made an unparalleled contribution to my Great Qin Dynasty. If it weren't for your Highness, we would probably never have discovered these crops. A minister understood Ying Zheng's meaning very well and without hesitation chose to agree. At this point, several officials in charge of testing have also completed the testing and are all excitedly rushing towards this side, excited completely unlike what a person in their teens should look like. Ying Zheng, Wang Ben and others also followed suit. P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Yanzu. Chapter 8. Terrifying Harvest and Ying Zheng's Praise. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before a few agricultural officials could run to their side, Ying Zheng couldn't contain his excitement and asked what was the result. Several agricultural officials, whose hair had already turned white, looked at each other one after another, and then tears of excitement welled up as they knelt down on their knees and spoke. "Congratulations, Your Majesty, congratulations, Your Majesty. Oh my God! These are all divine objects. God bless me in Daqin." Several agricultural officials with gray hair were so excited that it was worrying that they might lose their breath at any moment. Ying Zheng saw them in such a state. I already have a guess in my heart. His heart became increasingly excited, and he struggled to suppress it. How about the yield per mu? Among several agricultural officials, the middle one wiped away the tears on his face and began to report excitedly. "Your Majesty, the main crops we measure are corn, potatoes, and sweet potatoes. The yield of corn is as high as 1,200 kilograms per acre. It is 4 times the highest yield of chestnuts and wheat." As soon as this statement is made, Ying Ze was initially puzzled, but with a slight thought, he understood. This is the corn I picked up, and the quality should be good. The yield can easily reach the highest yield in previous lives. So other crops may also exceed his estimate. However, the more yield per mu, the more advantageous it is for the Great Qin. But Ying Zheng and Wang Ben, among others, were full of shock and surprise. After all, as Ying Ze mentioned before, corn is a staple food crop with a yield of up to 1,000 kilograms per mu. I thought this was already enough, but to my surprise, it even exceeded Ying Ze's expectations. The yield per mu is surprisingly as high as 1,200 pounds. Moreover, corn can be planted every year and does not consume much of the land's nutrients. This is simply their dream food crop. What about the remaining 2? Ying Zheng asked. The official immediately answered, "Potatoes yield 5,000 pounds per mu. And sweet potatoes, yield per mu. Yield 12,000 kilograms per mu. Your Majesty, this is Tianyu Daqin." In the end, this official couldn't help but shed tears again. "I have been with the fields for a lifetime, and I never expected to see such a divine creature before I die. Even if he dies now, there is no regret." When the officials finished speaking, everyone's breath couldn't help but be rapid. Lise was almost stunned and numb. Potatoes yield 5,000 pounds per mu. Sweet potatoes yield 12,000 kilograms per mu. This is even more astonishing than the yield Your Highness said. I can't imagine. In the side hall of Xianyang Palace, he even refuted General Wang Ben. "It is impossible to have crops that yield 1,000 kilograms per mu in the world. I didn't expect to be slapped so quickly. And this terrifying crop is not just one kind. Even the corn with the lowest yield per mu has a yield of 1,200 kilograms. The yield of potatoes per mu is as high as 5,000 pounds. And the yield of sweet potatoes per mu, it has even reached an astonishing 12,000 pounds. Many officials, also shocked by the words of agricultural officials, dared not even breathe. Everyone was amazed by the yield of sweet potatoes per acre. Originally in the main hall, I thought it was just a stronger grain crop than chestnuts and wheat. After hearing the yield of 6,000 kilograms per mu, they found it hard to imagine. Now, after specific measurements by officials, they found that they still underestimated the yield of sweet potatoes. Yielding 12,000 kilograms per mu. It's 40 times more than the grain crops chestnut and wheat in Daqin. This terrifying acre yield is already enough to be described as terrifying. Even Ying Zheng and Wang Ben, who were already mentally prepared, were once again shocked. The yield of sweet potatoes has almost surpassed their understanding time and time again. Yielding 12,000 kilograms per mu, this is their usual yield that they dare not even think about. Yielding 12,000 kilograms per mu, even if there are twice as many people in Daqin, they can still afford to support them. After being shocked, Wang Ben was the first to react and without hesitation bowed to Ying Zheng. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. From now on, the people of Great Qin can finally have enough to eat. With this crop, the national strength of Great Qin will increase more than 10 times. As soon as Wang Ben spoke, other officials also responded, and their hearts were full of roast. It's a shame for these civil servants to have Wang Ben, the military general, take the lead. Ha ha ha. Okay. Okay. Ying Zheng was overjoyed and couldn't help but burst into laughter. The worries and frustrations of the past few days have dissipated, however, he did not forget that all of this was thanks to Ying Ze. If it weren't for Ying Ze, he cannot obtain such a divine object. With this food crop, almost all the difficulties of the Great Qin could be easily solved. Just wait, these food crops will be popularized within the Great Qin dynasty. Qin will usher in an unprecedented prosperity. And all of this, it's all because of Ying Ze's discovery. He looked at Ying Ze and liked him more and more, and so far, he has not noticed any significant changes in Ying Ze's expression. Extremely stable, it is the quality of a monarch to have a calm Mount Taishan when it collapses before his eyes. He couldn't help but speak up. Zaire, you are really my lucky star in Qin. P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Yanzu. Chapter 9. Fu Su. 19 younger brothers, who are my great Qin Fu. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Playing in the backyard, surprisingly, one could encounter sweet potatoes with a yield of over 10,000 kilograms per mu, and the yield of potatoes and corn per mu far exceeds that of grain crops such as chestnuts and wheat. And there's also what Zaire said, vegetables such as chili peppers and tomatoes can greatly enrich the meals of the people of the Great Qin dynasty, and all of this, it's all because of Ying Ze. Even Ying Zheng felt extremely unbelievable. Zaire's luck, that's really great. However, it was precisely because of his luck that the Qin obtained these grains that were comparable to divine objects. As soon as Ying Zheng finished speaking, Ying Ze shook his head and looked at Wang Yan holding hands. Father, this is not my fault alone. Don't forget, there is also Yan Er's sister. Upon hearing this, the ministers around turned their heads and looked at Wang Ben with envy. Obviously, your Highness is sharing the power of the heavens with Wang Yan. Thanks to this, almost equivalent to a death-free token, it will even be remembered by the people of the world, spread for eternity. Upon hearing this, Ying Zheng couldn't help but burst into laughter. Don't worry, I won't forget. Father will not forget. He glanced at Ying Ze and Wang Yan, who looked like golden children and jade maidens, and his heart became even happier. This kid still remembers to think about the little girl. However, Wang Yan's words are also worthy of Ying Ze. He looked at Wang Ben and said with a hint of meaning, General Wang, you have given birth to a good daughter. Wang Ben quickly clasped his fists and lowered his head to bow, I dare not. Meanwhile, Wang Ben quietly glanced and was holding his daughter's hand. With a calm expression on his face, Ying Ze's gaze moved slightly. Although he was a bit jealous, he didn't pay much attention and just treated it as a friendship between children. However, His Highness Ying Ze, who is only 6 years old, has made such great contributions, yet he can still remain so humble and impetuous. It's not easy. Wang Ben sighed in his heart. If the credit for such a heinous act falls on the eldest son Feilu and the 18th son Hu Hai, I'm afraid I'm already excited beyond my control. Even if he receives this incredible credit, he may not be able to be so calm. Moreover, what made Wang Ben most suspicious was that, His Highness Ying Ze generously distributed such tremendous credit to his daughter Wang Yan without any concern. In fact, he was vaguely pulling the Wang family to his side. This is not just an unintentional move by His Highness, or was it intentional? Wang Ben decided to observe Ying Ze more. He is not averse to Ying Ze's wooing, on the contrary, as the prince. If there is no such ability, then it is considered unqualified. Just, compared to the eldest Prince Feilu, Hu Hai, and other princes, His Highness Ying Ze, who is only 6 years old, does not have many supporters. However, the ultimate decision maker is still His Majesty the First Emperor. The mansion of the Grand Prince of Qin, Confucius said. The passing of time is like a fleeting man, willing to sacrifice day and night. Confucius said. In a magnificent attic, there came the crisp sound of reading, and the sound of reading comes from a young man dressed in a white robe, holding a bamboo slip. he is the eldest son of the Great Qin. Feilu. And in front of him, the old man, dressed in a loose white Confucian robe and with gray-white hair, it is the crown prince and grand tutor. Chunyu. Chunyu was extremely satisfied as he gazed at Fushu's strict study of Confucian classics and his dignified demeanor as a gentleman. Nowadays, the Great Qin ruled the world. If Confucianism wants to become the most prominent scholar in the world, it must enter the hall of the Great Qin dynasty. The first emperor had a misunderstanding of Confucianism, but the eldest son, Feilu, was deeply influenced by Confucianism. As long as Feilu takes that position, Confucianism will surely prosper. At that time, Confucianism will become the only orthodox doctrine, and I will also become a renowned imperial teacher that has been passed down for generations. At this point, the middle-aged butler in the mansion hurriedly walked in from outside and handed a scroll of brocade books to Feilu. Young master, Madame Zheng has received an urgent message from the palace. Oh. The news from my mother. During this period of time studying Confucian classics at the mansion, I haven't visited my mother. Does my mother want to support Su? Upon hearing this, Feilu put down the bamboo slips, took the brocade book, and smiled. I thought my mother missed me and wanted me to go to the palace to see her. But when he opened the brocade book and looked from head to head, his pupils suddenly widened with disbelief and joy. Ha ha ha, good. 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 It's unbelievable that there are such high-yield crops in the world. With these food crops, the people of Daqin no longer have to go hungry. And these divine crops were actually found by the 19th brother in the backyard. This luck is against the sky. At this moment, Feilu had already forgotten the so-called gentlemanly demeanor. It's really something from the brocade book, it's really shocking. On the side, Chunyu frowned slightly and saw Feilu laughing, feeling slightly displeased, but he was also curious about what Feilu had seen and how happy he was. Your Highness, what do you mean by this statement? Chunyu asked. It seems to be related to high-yield grain. Feilu smiled and placed the brocade book in front of Chunyu. Please have a personal look, master. 19th brother is really my lucky star in the Great Qin dynasty. Upon hearing this, Chunyu became even more curious and picked up the brocade book. Starting from scratch, when you see sweet potatoes that yield 12,000 kilograms per mu, suddenly stood up in shock. P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Ying Ze. Chapter 10. Worried Chunyu, the reward of the first emperor. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Produce 12,000 kilograms of sweet potatoes per mu. Produce 5,000 pounds of potatoes per mu. There is also corn that can be cultivated annually and yield thousands of kilograms per mu. This is a divine gift from heaven. Chunyu looked more and more shocked. He naturally knew that the highest yields of chestnuts and wheat per mu in the world were only 200 to 300 kilograms per mu. However, these few crops can actually yield as little as 1,000 kilograms per mu. He continued to look down. When you see these high-yield crops, surprisingly, it was the 19th Prince Ying Ze who encountered it while playing in the backyard. My mouth suddenly grew up in surprise, unable to close for a long time. What kind of luck is this? In the desolate backyard, there are so many high-yield crops to come across. Isn't this luck too good? After all, this discovery is not about one type, but several high-yield crops, as well as more than a dozen other vegetable crops. It's like, these things were sent by heaven to His Highness Ying Ze. However, soon after, Chunyu suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. As a courtier of the Great Qin, he naturally knew that the Great Qin had been worrying about food recently, and by chance, His Highness 19 found such a high-yield crop. This is a great achievement for the Qin dynasty. But for the eldest son Feilu, as well as the Confucian scholars who have already placed bets on Feilu, this is definitely not good news. He put down the brocade book and immediately spoke to Feilu. Your Highness, Your Highness 19 has discovered such a divine object and your Majesty is now delighted. It would be better for you to enter the palace as soon as possible. That's exactly what I meant. Feilu nodded slightly. 18 Young Master's mansion, compared to studying the Confucian classics of Feilu diligently in the government. However, at the age of 10, Hu Hai couldn't bear it at all. He can't sit still and always wants to go out and play. This made Zhao Gao, who was ordered by the first emperor to serve as the teacher of Hu Hai, feel a headache. I don't care, I'm going out. Hu Hai lay on the floor, rolling back and forth, as if Zhao Gao didn't agree, so he wouldn't get up. Zhao Gao, dressed in a black robe, frowned when he saw Hu Hai's appearance. It's really difficult to teach the 18 young master. It would be great if it were the 19 young master. Zhao Gao sighed and made a compromise. Master Hu Hai, as long as you finish learning this one, I'll wait for you to go and explore the city of Xianyang. How about that? Okay. It's a deal. Getting what he wanted, Hu Hai rubbed himself up from the ground. At this moment, the butler of Hu Hai's mansion walked in from outside, holding a brocade book. Your Highness, there is news from Madame Hu. After speaking, the butler respectfully handed the brocade book to Hu Hai. Hu Hai pursed his lips. He still wants to go out and play. He didn't dare not ignore the news that came from his mother. After reading it, he casually threw the brocade book on the ground, disdainful. Isn't it just some food? What's the big deal? With so much food, we can't finish it. What if we find new food? However, Zhao Gao bent down and picked it up. After watching it, his figure trembled violently. He is not like Hu Hai, who knows nothing about the affairs of the court. To put it bluntly, these high-yield grains are enough to sustain the tussa of the Great Qin state for 100 years, or even longer. This is the ultimate achievement. And this was actually encountered by His Highness Ying Ze while playing in the backyard. What kind of luck is this? Why didn't he notice that he often took care of the backyard back then? However, after being shocked, Zhao Gao quickly realized the seriousness of the problem. His Majesty the First Emperor, who was already extremely fond of His Highness Ying Ze, after he has made great contributions, how will he be rewarded? Perhaps it will affect the pattern of the Great Qin dynasty. Young Master Hu Hai, Your Majesty has discovered such a divine object. You should go to the palace as soon as possible to congratulate him. Upon hearing this, Hu Hai agreed without hesitation. As long as he doesn't read, let him dare anything. Subsequently, Hu Hai took Zhao Gao straight to Xianyang Palace. Meanwhile, Xianyang Palace, backyard. Ying Zheng, who no longer had to worry about food, looked very happy. But he has not forgotten his greatest hero. He looked at Ying Ze happily and smiled, saying, Zaire, what reward do you want for making such contributions to the empire? It can be said that having made such great contributions, it's already enough to make an ordinary person be granted a marquis or title. So, even if Ying Ze makes any excessive demands, as long as he can meet them, he will definitely not refuse. However, Ying Ze's answer greatly exceeded his expectations. Ying Ze shook his head and said calmly, sharing the worries of the empire is what I, as the crown prince of the Great Qin, should do. Why do I need any more rewards? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone including Ying Zheng and Wang Ben suddenly felt surprised. Is this really something that a 6-year-old child can say? You should know that this is the reward of the first emperor. I don't know how many ministers they are, but I can't even ask for them. However, Ying Ze seemed to be completely indifferent. Wang Ben nodded secretly, so open-minded, so measured. Even if we cannot inherit the throne in the future, Ying Ze will eventually be extraordinary. Ying Zheng became increasingly satisfied with Ying Ze's performance in his heart. This is the magnanimity and responsibility that a prince of the Great Qin should possess. However, he has already figured out how to reward Ying Ze. P.S. Every day at 10 o'clock, old authors are asking for flowers, evaluation tickets, comments, monthly tickets, and rewards. The first day is really important. Thank you all, Ying Ze.